Hello and welcome. This is the Market Wrap. The benchmark indices may have taken a step back today, but there is no reason to be concerned. We've had the IMD upgrade the monsoon forecast to 98% of the long-term period from 96% earlier. I know this is only a 200 basis points increase, but it is closer to the normal rating for as far as IMD is concerned. But to take stock of the market, we are also in conversation with Hemang Jani of Sharekhan. Thank you for joining us. But Hemang, before I come to you, I'm going to ask Nikki to take us through what's happened as far as the Nifty is concerned today.
Sure. After a record high just at the opening, we've seen Nifty correcting a little bit and ending below that 9,650 mark with losses of around 0.4%. This is after a long time that the Nifty is actually closing below that 9,650 mark. If you could see down in the second half of the trade, we have actually seen some profit booking coming in. Notably, this is just a day ahead of the RBI monetary policy. Before I touch base upon this issue, I would first like to get in conversation with you, sir, and would like to understand now with MET department actually upping the monsoon upgrades, what kind of impact do you see that on markets? In which direction do you see the markets moving going forward?
I think definitely sentimentally it's going to be positive because we had some concerns about what kind of monsoon are we going to have, because the market has already run up. We are near all-time high levels. The corporate results have not been that great. So to justify any meaningful upside from current levels, normal monsoon is something that definitely the market would want it. So this would come as a big sentiment booster. But I think the market would definitely wait and see the actual monsoon before they react in a big way. So yes, in terms of sentiment, you may have some positive reaction.
Hemang, if I may come in here, when it comes to you advising your clients, are there any themes that you have already told them about with respect to the monsoons? It could be in the agricultural sector or, for example, fertilizers or for that matter, consumption. Anything that you still see that could have a little more space to gain from these levels?
Yes, monsoon is definitely one of the themes that we have been recommending our customers, and within that we are looking at some of the auto names like Mahindra,
Right.
Maruti, and some of the FMCG names, because a part of the positivity is also because of the GST, and some of the FMCG companies would have some positive rub-off. And if we have a monsoon positive news, it will have some positive implications for those companies also. Apart from that, we also like housing theme, because the focus of the government is on housing. So the entire spectrum, the housing companies per se, housing finance companies, and paints and material companies are the ones which would have a major benefit, or they are going to be the beneficiary of the impetus which is going to come in. So that's the theme that we've been liking and we've been advising our clients.
Okay, so you address consumption partly through paints, but would you not be concerned about the valuations that we are looking at right now?
See, absolutely, we are in a bull market.
Yes.
So valuation wise things would look a bit frothy, but when you have such a strong liquidity flow, and the fact that the retail participation has not been that great,
Yes.
Even if you look at the F&O side, on the top 15-20 stocks, the position is very light.
Right.
So that makes us a little bit more comfortable with the market at this point of time. Though valuation-wise, it will look a little stretched, but we think that it is justified given the outlook that one is really looking at.
Right. So I'm going to come back to you on earnings, but before I address that, let me go on to what's happened in the futures and options space today. Now, considering the fact that we've seen a little bit of a correction in the Nifty, what we are looking at is writing in the 9,700 call, and that's the most active option that we've seen today. With respect to the range that we may look at based on max OI, we're looking at the 9,500 put with the max OI, followed by the 9,700 call. So further addition to the 9,700 call. Well, a narrow range, but this is of course very roughly speaking the range that we can expect for the Nifty to move in between over the next couple of days. And once again, I will come to the question of the expectation of revival in earnings. And I know, Hemang, that the implementation of GST is also going to pose some challenges when it comes to the bottom line, at least in the next couple of quarters. When are you expecting the big, robust recovery in earnings to come?
See, we all have been waiting for the earnings revival. It's somehow not coming through for the last almost 3 years.
Yes.
The market has run up quite a bit.
Right.
So expectations are high, but I think because of the GST implementation, this quarter or two would be very difficult to gauge in terms of impact. There's going to be destocking and stuff like that.
Right.
So I think the market is not too much worried about that. I think the genuine earnings growth should come after about couple of quarters, particularly for FY19. The growth should be about 15 to 18%.
Right.
That is the expectation that the market is working with.
Well, Nikki, I'm going to leave it to you to take over and take us through some of the key gainers and losers in today's job.
Sure, Agam. Before I could address that, just a follow-up question that I have for you, since you've spoken about earnings. I'd just like to understand, how do you see the defensive space as a whole now? You see, today for the day today, we saw IT stocks pretty much dominating the trade today. They were up and about with gains. How do you see these stocks panning out going in the future in terms of their earnings?
See, IT stocks have given a smart pullback in the last 2 or 3 weeks, primarily because there was some kind of underperformance, and now that the TCS buyback is over, and now there's a sense that probably the actual numbers this quarter will not be that bad compared to previous quarter. So there is some kind of an expectation built up, but given the challenges which are there and the growth outlook being so muted, I think there is not a case for a significant up move in the IT space. At best, they will remain range bound.
Alright, then moving on to the top gainers and the top losers for the day that we have. We have HCL Technologies, as we just discussed about, the IT pack leading the gainers. We have TCS next in the list. Then we have Infosys, all up and about with gains of around 2 to 3 odd percent. On the flip side, on the negative side, we have Tata Motors, which has ended the day with losses of around 3.5%. NTPC, India Bull Housing Finance 2, have ended the day in red with losses of around 2 to 2.5%. Okay, moving on to the broad question that I have. All eyes on RBI monetary policy review that we all know and we're talking about. Not much is expected in terms of rate cut though. However, how do you see the future stance? Do you see a hawkish approach, a dovish, or a neutral stance coming in from the governor?
I think for now, there's going to be a status quo that we are looking at because though the GDP numbers and the GVA numbers have not been that good, there's definitely a bit of a slowdown. But given the fact that the bond yields globally are likely to inch up, the possibility of a rate cut in this particular monetary policy is pretty low. But I think market is not too much worried about it because we're seeing the liquidity situation pretty comfortable. So I think we have to see in the next policy if we at all have a rate cut.
Alright, so next policy is what we're looking at. Agam, back to you.
Well, so, okay, I'm going to address the broader markets then. And as far as the market breadth is concerned, what we're looking at is, well, nearly 2 gainers for, well, almost 5 losers. Bliss GVS Pharma stood out today at locked in down circuit of around 20%, followed by Nitin Fire Protection. We're looking at a correction in Reddington. Shilpi Cables, of course, the usual suspect on the list, followed by Videocon, another one of those. Gujarat State Fertilizers as well as Adani Transmission also looking at some amount of weakness, with Titan actually looking at a profit taking decline by as much as 4.4% after the kind of strength we've seen yesterday. Future Retail, on the other hand, gaining as much as 13.7%. Info Edge, Adani Enterprises, Swan Energy, as well as Apollo Tyres. All of these stocks gaining substantially in today's day of trade.
Not looked at it.
That said, Hemang, a last question from my side would be: you've spoken about housing finance. You've spoken about some other NBFCs as well. Are there any themes that other themes that you may like for now?
Yeah, so tire as a theme is something that we've been liking a lot, and we're seeing that the rubber prices have actually gone down in the last few days. So I think apart from the rubber prices being down, the fact that the overall auto sector is doing well, so one is really looking at a decent 12-15% kind of volume growth.
Right.
Apart from that, because of the focus of the Chinese makers onto the US markets, the competitive intensity has reduced. So some of the domestic tire companies have been able to take a price hike. So I think the environment is turning favorable. So some of the companies like JK Tires and Apollo Tire is something that we've been liking because they are still available at a decent valuation. So there is a good upside of 15-20% is what we are really looking at from the tire companies at this point of time.
Well, there you have it. Plenty of themes to keep an eye on. But with that, Hemang, I want to thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure speaking with you. And as for you guys, well, we'll see you once again tomorrow on another edition of Market Wrap. But till then, it's goodbye.